Hey Eiyo.
Welcome to the Hey Eiyo podcast, where I yap about whatever I want with whoever I want. Enjoy!
Hey guys, my name is Eiyo, and I want to thank you all for listening to my first episode for this podcast entitled Hey Eiyo. And today we have a very special guest. Syempre, of course, it's my first episode. I wanted to make this first meaningful. And so I brought along one of my favorites. He's a senior lecturer at the UP Diliman. And he's also the executive director at the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation. And he's also my second cousin.
Right.
The apo of Ninoy and Cory Aquino, and pamangkin of Pinoy, and of course, our newly elected top 2 Senator, Bam Aquino. And I consider him a really good friend.
Right.
More than as a good cousin, good friend also. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Kiko Aquino-Dee.
Hi everyone, and thanks Eiyo for the introduction. I'm not gonna ask your favorite what. Might cause some trouble, but thanks for inviting. And yeah, like I like yapping about this kind of stuff.
That's why I thought of you.
Yeah.
So I think before we dig deep into like just a lot of things, a lot of yapping, the main question I have right now is, how the hell did we get here to this point? Like for context, guys, I mean there's a lot of things that happened the last week.
Yeah.
We're filming this what day is it today?
Today is
Saturday, May 17th. Nagka-election lang tayo last May 12, last Monday. And I was floored.
Floored is exactly it, right? So like, how the hell did this happen? Like, nobody knows, right? That's the real. Nobody knows. Nobody predicted this except like Madutikia. So maybe we should be asking her, right? But like,
Thank you.
for basically, nobody really knows what's happening, and like, and you're seeing a lot of takes. I'm sure, like you are, I am, like a lot of people listening. Maybe if you're listening to this, like around the time we're recording it, you're gonna see a lot of takes about here's what's happened. Like this is what it means. This is what it means. This is what it means. And we're gonna give our takes too.
Yep,
right?
yep.
But
for sure.
I just want you to know, like, nobody knows. Nobody knows. We have opinions.
Yeah.
We have narratives that we'd like to forward, and I'll be transparent about that. I have a certain narrative that I want to push, but like in the end, nobody really knows, right?
Yeah.
So feel however you want to feel about this election. You're entitled to it. You deserve it. Yeah. Because practically no one knows better than you right now.
Oh yes, definitely. And I think although the research hasn't come out yet, I mean it's a pretty fresh event, and I'm sure there's a lot of pol sci students will come out with surveys or with studies. Maybe you might.
You know what? Honest, because like even I don't know what data to use to parse this, right? Because like in past elections, so we used to have exit polls in the Philippines, right?
Yes.
Where the survey firms would send people right outside voting precincts. They'd ask, "Oh, who did you vote for?"
Yes.
Ask you certain demographics. They stopped doing that in 2016 because the big funders of exit polls used to be media companies.
Okay.
So, because like before we had automated elections, it would take a while to count, and the media companies would want to have an early idea of who would be ahead. So the exit poll was useful for that.
Yes.
But now that the counting is so quick, the media companies really don't feel the need to spend that much for an exit poll. Because like an exit poll is like a massive operation. You ask like tens of thousands of people, unlike like a survey where you just like ask a couple thousands.
Yeah.
Right? So before we could get away with that because the surveys largely predicted what would happen on the day of the election. So we could get a lot of insight about what happened, like what kinds of people, what are the demographics that voted for which candidate from like your pre-election surveys, since they largely predict the actual election. But now, since all of the pre-election surveys are so off, it's going to be really hard to figure out, okay, who exactly are the people who voted for Tito Bam or for some of the other candidates or for some of the party lists that we're interested in. So it's going to be a lot of like building the bridge while we're walking it. building the bridge behind us, which is not really physically possible. But like,
Yeah.
that's kind of what has to happen right now, and it's hard, but yeah, it's an exciting time, right? All of the stuff I know about political science in the Philippines, at least,
Yes.
it's pretty much out the window. So like,
Yeah.
it's all fresh, it's all new. It's exciting, but yeah, it's a challenge too.
True.
Yeah.
Quick shout out to our partners at Divya for lending us their new wireless microphone. I find it really cool, honestly. If you want to be an influencer, just getting started, this is really a product for you. So it's the wireless microphone Ultra 1 mini version. It's a small, tiny device that has two microphones magnetically attached to it. And these magnetically attached microphones can attach to your shirt, which I think is the perfect place to put it, so you're most audible. And all you gotta do is put a clip with a magnet on it behind your shirt, and you just put them together. So they really stay on your shirt. And the contraption also comes with two adapters, one Lightning and one Type-C, depending on what your phone is. So you can just attach it and then your mic will automatically connect to your phone. So when you film using your camera, process is seamless. You don't have to worry about connecting the mic anymore. So I highly recommend this product. Thank you again, Divya, and let's get back to the show.
I think that applies mostly to the stuff we know about, studying the survey, studying the elections, studying the results with surveys and trying to predict the behaviors in the Philippines. But I think there's a lot of stuff that I want to unpack later,
Right.
that I think was already of common knowledge that eventually led to the victory of Senator Bam and Senator Kiko. But just to give you guys some perspective, like Kiko and I were talking earlier about how the victory of Senator Bam is actually not a new phenomenon, at least within the family.
Right.
So I'd like to call it the lucky second Aquino charm, wherein you had Senator Bam win second place in this election, but this wasn't the first time.
Right.
Like in 1987, my grandfather, former Senator Butch Aquino, also ranked second in the senatorial election. And I'm sure you also have some.
And my Lolo Ninoy, finished second in 1967.
Yes,
right?
1967. And that election, 1967, 1987, were 20 years apart.
20 years apart.
20, more or less 20 years after that, Pinoy ran for
exactly
the
20 years,
Senate.
because it was 2007.
2007,
right?
yes, exactly.
So he finished sixth, right? Top half.
Oh.
Right? And that one was come from behind too, because like it was
Yes.
like he was running against the administration at the time, and
Yes.
I remember we were quite nervous about that.
Oh, really? You guys
fine.
were-
I don't remember me firsthand, but I remember
Oh.
my mom and her sisters being quite
Oh.
nervous about it at the time.
Okay.
But people now, just since I'm
Yeah.
doing work with Aquino Foundation, we have to like tell the whole story.
Yes.
A lot of people talk about how now, like his survey numbers didn't really. He's doing pretty much where Tito Bam was in the surveys, right? Like thereabouts, like 12, sometimes 15, 16, sometimes like breaking in once in a while. So we weren't sure, but people said, in his case, things turned around when Lola Cory had this ad where he was like, parang magiging mabuti siyang senador kung hindi lagot siya sa
I remember
something
that.
something to that effect, right?
I remember that. Was
So-
it? I think she was like in a living room or something.
Yeah,
And then Pinoy was there pa in that ad also.
yeah, right. But I guess what's different is that with that one, you can really point to, okay, this is when things turned around. Right?
Yeah.
Here is just like, I mean, we were doing, like you were saying, right? It felt good during the campaign, right?
Yes,
like
it
Tito
did.
Bam himself said, like there wasn't a bad day.
Yes.
Like, we were hitting like all of our targets, but I don't think our targets were second place.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
Like second place was
Yeah.
not like on the radar at all.
Right.
Parang I remember during the mass, you mentioned kanina. It was,
Yeah. So see, Tito Bam was saying like there was a survey that said, I forget which one, but he was like 3 to 13.
3
So
to
not a
13.
sure win, but it could be big. But you know, I
Yeah.
mean, I think when he actually got the news, he was saying we're expecting 6th at best.
6th at best.
Something
Yeah.
like
I was
So-
expecting. I'm a very like realistic person. I was
Yeah.
expecting like 11th at the most.
Same,
maybe 10th.
same. I was trying to
Diba?
make my fearless forecast. I was like, I think
Yeah.
he'll get. Actually, percentage-wise, I don't. I think I overshot maybe percentage wise because anyway we can look that up later. But like I was thinking he was like 12th, 11th.
Oh, yeah, that
So,
was
that
big
was-
big shocker.
Floored is exactly the word.
How did you like find out? Like, saan ka?
All right, so
were you on the toilet?
as you might know, I went on like a side quest this election, right?
Okay.
Where I would surrogate for Tito Bam once in a while, but the main group I was working with was Mama Meng
Meng
Liberal,
Liberal,
so
okay.
ML party list of Laila Diliman, right?
Yes.
And I was not particularly hopeful for ML on the last few days. Like there wasn't a single survey that said we would make it in.
Okay.
But I found out I'm Green Meadows, right? So I found out like when the Comelec website for the individual clustered precinct level election returns came out, I found out that ML was doing 1 vote for every 2 votes of Akbayan.
Oh.
In Green Meadows, in my
Okay.
case. Which okay, fine, it's a little higher. It's a higher end is putting it mildly, but like it's like that one of those like subdivisions where you would expect like our candidates from our side to do well. So I was thinking, okay, I mean this is pretty good news, like because like in the surveys of ML, we weren't actually doing that well in ABC, strangely enough. Right?
Yes.
So okay, if we're doing 1:2 Akbayan, that's
Yeah.
probably a good sign. So I text our campaign manager, "Kumusta? How are we doing?" He said, "Medyo optimistic pa, punta ka dito."
Wow.
So I went there. I went to their HQ where they were doing all of the monitoring. It's in the 4th floor of a building, right? So I climb up the stairs. And by the time I hit like the second, I'm halfway between the 2nd and 3rd floor. Naririnig ko na yung hiyawan sa 4th floor.
Oh my god.
Right? And then when I come in, they tell me ML is at like 310 votes with less than 50% of the precincts reporting. And you just like
310K.
310K, right?
Wow, that's
310K votes.
Above the 250K threshold.
Well, I mean, like the threshold's like a moving target in the elections,
Okay.
right? But like
Yeah.
you do start feeling good when you get past 250. Right?
Okay.
So like, and there are some worlds where you don't win with 310K, but like if you have half the votes, half the precincts still to come,
Yeah.
you're really comfortable. Right? So I was like floored then. Then they finally showed the report for Bam and Kiko, and I was like, 2? What am I looking at? So that was so I one of the better, like I think that's one of the better, like how I found out where was I
Yeah,
stories, right?
At least you're with people already.
Yeah. How did you find out?
I came from a dinner. Tapos nagmamaneo ako. I was coming from Makati, papuntang QC kasi that's where the counting was. And then yung sa YouTube kasi there were a bunch of live counts on YouTube. And I was looking at those, parang hindi na ako kailangan mag-refresh kasi live naman.
Yeah.
Tapos I had it on, pero nothing was coming out. Parang lahat was still zero. It's already 8:15 p.m. The polls closed at 7. And then my dad just starts messaging our group chat.
Yeah.
He's like, Bam got number 1 in this area.
Yeah.
Bam got number 1 in this area. Wow, top 2 na siya. I was like, wait. Chill, I'm still on the road.
Yeah.
And then I get there, and then I enter the room, and everyone is just like floored.
Yeah.
Like everyone is just clapping, and it was a party.
Right.
And I was, honestly, I shed a tear. Like, it was crazy. Like, wow. My jaw was just on the floor like the whole time.
So I will say the 2 days I've drank the most, and I'm not like Aquinos. Like I don't know about your side of the family, but my side of the Aquinos, we don't drink. Right?
Yeah.
Tito and I didn't drink. Claude and I didn't drink.
Yeah.
I can, but like I'm very bad at it. Right? The 2 days I've drunk the most since college for 2022 for a parallel but completely different reason. And last Monday.
Oh my god. Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you're enjoying, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Eiyo Aquino, EIYOAQUINO on TikTok. Yeah, I think when the clock struck midnight on election night, that's when the drinks came out. Kasi may liquor ban eh.
Well. The liquor ban is like for selling.
For selling,
You
yeah.
have to have liquor before.
Ako ay medyo followed that pa. But then once the clock struck midnight, I was like, bring out the scotch. But it was a really like amazing experience, I think.
Yeah.
That night. Like,
And it's big for like, because like,
crazy.
so for me, my first election was 2010.
Okay.
which was a good experience,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Tito Noy won, right? But for like a lot of people who I've worked with, a lot of my students, a lot of people closer to your age, right?
Mhm.
When's the last time like you were really invested in an election and like that investment was paid off, right?
Mhm.
Because like so many people were so active during the 2022 campaign for Lenny, and yun, nabigo sila, di ba? They didn't get what they wanted, right? Ocho
Yeah.
Derecho animated a lot of people, but like nope, didn't get what we wanted in 2019, right?
Yeah.
And you keep, like, I mean, it's amazing that so many of us like stayed together and still like campaigned really hard
Definitely.
in 2025. But you have to imagine, like, if you keep just getting loss after loss after loss, that'll cause a lot of attrition, right? So
Yeah.
this win was like such a big deal, right? Like
Mhm.
the people I was with sa ML, right? It's the first time they campaigned for someone where the return was not just like barely a win, but like a clear
Victory.
win for Tito Bam, second for Kiko Pangilinan, fifth for ML. We were like 14th. Akbayan number one for
I
party
know.
list, 3 seats, right? So
Galing.
like I don't think any of us imagined like having this clear, this profound victory.
Yeah.
But it's really something I think we needed. Right?
Yes.
It's really something we needed.
I think you're right. It's something the pink movement needed after multiple losses in the last few years.
Yeah.
And ako per se, I hope it really energizes the movement moving
Absolutely.
forward. I think there was a podcast recently by Ian Esguerra, and then I think attorney Barry Gutierrez was the host, and he was reminding people like, this is a win, take it in, but wag kampante kasi
Right.
marami pang kailangan gawin.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a midterm election more than anything. So marami pang trabaho, I think, for the pink movement, and but this is a really good energizer, I
Yeah,
think.
but
I mean,
and to that point, right?
praise.
So I said like nobody really knows what they're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is spinning, right? So but
Oo.
allow me to spin now, right?
Yes.
So like to me, it means like the eyes of the country are on our side.
Oh
right?
yes.
It's because like for the last
Definitely.
3 years, it was this family or that family, right?
Yes.
This faction or that faction, kadiliman or kasamaan,
Yes.
right? And it for the first time in a while, in a way that we weren't really expecting, the eyes of the country are on us now.
Tama.
And so the big question is like, what are you going to do with all that attention?
True.
Right? What are we going to present? What are we going to present to the people, so
True.
that come 2028 and all of the succeeding elections, like they will know with clarity, this is what you're voting for.
True.
Right? And
Yeah.
you got hints of that, right? See,
Yeah.
Tito Bam really ran on the legacy of like free college education,
Yes.
right?
Very concrete.
Like concrete, and like it's concrete, and it's also, well, this is like we can talk about like the hoity-toity like political science stuff later, but like concrete, but also like expanding like what you get as a Filipino, right?
Yes.
It's like for me, what I love about free college education is you get to say, because you're Filipino, you get to go to college.
Yeah.
Right? Not all the countries do that, but because you're Filipino, you get to go to college, right?
Yeah.
Or for I think Kiko Pangilinan, I think, announced that the first thing on his legislative hit list is like free breakfast, right? Which was something he pushed in the campaign. It's the same thing, right? Because you're Filipino.
Yes.
Parang karapatan mo na hindi ka mag-alala. You're not gonna worry. Hindi ka mag-aalala kung kakain yung anak mo ng almusal. Diba?
Yes.
Parang it's your right because you're Filipino, right? So I think like there's a big question, what are we gonna present to people? And I think like our big wins, Kiko and Bam, hint at what people might be looking for in us. And I think it's critical, but also really exciting that we're gonna roll that out in the next few we're gonna see that rolled out in the next few months.
Yeah, that's actually true. I think the we really got the messaging right here, and I think it's telling of what people want. And you made a distinction kanina between the familial conflict and this new phase of conflict. You're gonna put it in Marvel terms, diba?
Right.
2022 to 2025 was probably phase 1, or not on phase 1, pero so it was one phase of the conflict, and then after Monday, parang natapos na yung phase 1, naging
Right.
phase 2 na yung conflict.
Oo.
And more than just being a conflict between families,
Mhm.
more than just being a conflict of drama, now it's a conflict that involves messaging for
Right.
what the people need. And I think
Messaging and vision, no?
messaging and vision.
What are we going to present?
Yes.
So yun nga, and yun nga, parang, because the last, in terms of that, like the phase of the conflict, that point na we were thinking it's gonna be a duopoly between two families, and at first they were going to take turns, then all of a sudden it's like they came into conflict. And personally, my great fear is that we'd be crowded out in that conflict, that we wouldn't have space to put our message out there. But I've said as much to like people, but yeah, I'm wrong. Again, I'm washed up. I don't know anything anymore, right?
Yes.
But I think again, for me, what I'd like to take away from this election is that yun, parang nasa atin na yung mata ng ating mga kababayan.
Yes.
Parang people are looking to us. They're looking for an alternative. We have a chance to present that alternative.
Yes.
Right? So the next few months will be about, okay, what do we have to offer? Right? And again, it's challenging, but it's also really exciting.
It's very exciting, very exciting. So, okay, I think to be able to build on that narrative, there has to be, or to build on that vision, how the pink movement presents itself in the next 3 years. I think it's also worth examining like how we got 2025 right.
Sure.
So you mentioned the libreng colegio, the pride the Filipino felt when
Right.
when they're able to say, oh, I'm a Filipino, I have free college
Right.
in a state university, or even
Right.
other private schools would be beneficiaries of the TES. So having that kind of concrete platform and vision for the country was what helped send Bam, and then for send Kiko also, was agriculture and food security. What were some other things you think, as a political scientist, that helped influence this victory?
So again, like, I don't know. It's all a guesswork at this point, right? But I think
good. There's always the disclaimer.
so like we're just trying to map out what was going on, right? And I think, people I think are looking for that kind of politics, and I think the challenge is like, with senators, you can run on like one thing, right?
True.
Kiko Pangilinan can run on like lowering the price of food.
Yes.
Tito Bam can run on like free college education. In a presidential election, which is the next phase, right? I mean, there's a barangay election coming up maybe, but like that one, parties aren't allowed to participate. But so in a presidential election, it can't just be one thing, right? It needs to be wrapped up like in some easy to communicate vision, which I don't know what it is yet. But I think that idea of, kasi Pilipino ka, dapat may ganito ka. That might be the way to wrap, to tie all of these things into a bow. That this is our program of action. We want to make yung sa panatang makabayan natin na parang kinukup-kup ako at tinutulungan, right? We want to make that a reality, right? That we actually have a country that does that for us.
Yes. It's giving pero Canada, when you think of Canada, for example, when you think of the Scandinavian countries, they all have free healthcare, quality education, and so on. So parang it's bringing
something like that.
Some vision, merging that national identity with, basic human rights.
Yes, connecting social justice with pride of country.
Pride of country.
But again, this is all just this spitballing, right? This is my idea. Like I'm not a comms guy. I'm barely a political scientist anymore. So like, parang there are better ideas out there. But I'm just like thinking, here's how I would maybe like to put it together. So that's one, right? The platforms, right?
Okay.
Definitely, you can't get away from the context of like the current administration is like, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with it, and so I think people are looking for an alternative. I think that's also something that's very clear. Like, I think we were talking about 2007 when Tito Noy ran, and I think this is maybe my memory is too short term, but I feel like this is like the clear parallel.
Yes,
the pretty unpopular administration. That administration was basically sinaway yung administration na yun during this election. They were said, no, we will vote. While a significant chunk of like the administration's candidates won, a lot of people that it's kind of clear the administration would have rather not have wanted to win also made it in. And then you had Bam and Kiko, who also were independents, like not the administration, right? So it's clear that like dissatisfaction with the administration really might have really, I think, harmed a lot of candidates who otherwise might have done well in this election.
Yeah.
And by by carving out their own identity, carving out their own like space in our politics.
Yes.
Tito Bam and even si Senator Kiko were able to also take advantage of that, like take advantage of that dissatisfaction. Not even take advantage, but like offer themselves as an alternative in response to that dissatisfaction. So that's the second. And then I think the third one, and again, like this one is still pending like all of the data, because like I don't know if this is actually the case, right? But there's a popular narrative going on that this is the arrival of Gen Z, right? That a whole bunch of younger voters. Yes. That there's a theory that maybe the traditional survey, since they're house to house, they might not be capturing like a whole bunch of Gen Z that are maybe spending more time outside of the house, maybe more likely to be in school compared to before. Although that makes me question how come it captured the youth before. But anyway, like it's not all of the data is there yet. Yes. But you can tell a compelling story of how a lot of these college campus surveys predicted Tito Bam's vote, Senator Kiko's vote, a lot better than a lot of the traditional surveys did. And they predicted Akbayan's vote as well. Like Akbayan did like top one in so many different places.
Yes.
So many different colleges.
I remember nga, Tito Bam, because I would surrogate, and we can get to that also later on. Pero there was one kwento I had. I surrogated for Tito Bam in one in Tugigaraw. So it was actually both of them are voter ed events. One was in Tugigaraw, in Cagayan. The other one was in Coronadal in Jensan, near Jensan, sorry.
Right.
And when they played, kasi I give a speech, but before I give a speech, they'd play the video of Senator Bam. Grabe man, like rock star level yung reaction ng crowd. They're all clapping, they're all like, woo! And then the girls are like, I'm funny! So, yeah, like he's like the youth vote, I think, the youth vote hypothesis, I think, is something I think is worth looking at, because you're just seeing all those crowds, and I've encountered a lot more instances where I'd be with like more millennial Gen Z crowds in a campaign event, and the reaction is just amazing. They really reacted well, and I think and you can also tell with the college surveys, it's the reactions there. And you, to your point earlier, you mentioned the dissatisfaction with the current administration. I think that hypothesis also doesn't just apply to the very messaging as of Kiko Bam as the alternative, but it was also brought to the ground, because when you look at the amount of endorsements we got on the ground, like in different governors, mayoral candidates coming out to endorse us, when you look at their lists, they were halo-halo. Hindi siya puro administrasyon, hindi siya puro Duterte. It was a bunch of different combinations and modifications, and I think a lot of candidates did that because there was a lot of political capital that wasn't there for the side of the administration. So the machinery wasn't present as it was in, let's say, 2019. I mean, that's my point of comparison, because I was also pretty aware at the time. And so I think Kiko Bam, they were able to ride on that phenomenon, and today, like, the market vote measuring surveys put us at 9 to 12th place, 9 to 13, or even 18th place. And then come election day, you have the polls which are influenced by both market and command votes. They ended up putting Kiko Bam higher numbers than anything.
So I would like maybe contest a little bit that surveys don't hit like your
Command
command vote.
votes.
Sometimes like you tend to someone was telling me like that those two things, while you don't measure exactly like the command vote with survey, these two things tend to go hand in
Okay.
hand, right?
Uh-huh.
So like you do start to worry, which is like on ML side, like this is what was kind of happening. Like we saw like what on the ground people were telling us, like our
Yeah.
volunteers were like, I think we'll have this many in this place, this many in this place. And if you
Okay.
put all of that together, we still outperformed that. But like we would be, if you put all of that together, it looked like we'd be safe. Right? I mean,
Okay.
we'd make it in.
Mhm.
But the surveys weren't sort of matching that, right?
Yes.
So we again, like ML, there was never a survey. Pretty sure none of the traditional survey firms predicted ML getting it, right?
Yeah.
So there's some worry now. How come these two things aren't matching? So maybe it's that, maybe for once we saw the command vote like kind of diverge from the market vote. But yeah, it could also it could be that. There's also like we were talking about this earlier for party list, but maybe it has implications for senator also, where like because there were so many there's so many lists this election, right?
Yeah.
So like you had again Duterte, you had Kiko, Bam, and all of the and a lot of like the more progressive candidates that are side like your Heidi Mendoza's, Lucas Spiritus, what have you.
Mhm.
And then you had the Alianza slate.
Yes.
And yeah, these local politicians, since they know basically that the admin is kind of unpopular, perhaps the opportunity cost of not like bringing the whole admin slate is not that high. And even early on, like you were hearing that like your local politicians weren't sarado to anyone really,
Yeah.
compared to like the previous 2 years. This one was really a lot more of a genuine free for all.
Mhm.
So part of it might have also been like because of all of these lists going around, it becomes a lot harder maybe to marshal your command vote towards one direction or another, and maybe that's something that helped that too. But also, yeah, to your point, like he did like get a lot of endorsements from like a lot of local leaders that did not look like, or not just not look like, but that wasn't possible like in 2022, 2019. So it's a whole confluence of things, right?
Yeah, true. Quick shout out to our partners at Divya for lending us their new wireless microphone. I find it really cool, honestly. If you want to be an influencer, just getting started, this is really a product for you. So it's the wireless microphone Ultra 1 mini version. It's a small, tiny device that has two microphones magnetically attached to it. And these magnetically attached microphones can attach to your shirt, which I think is the perfect place to put it, so you're most audible. And all you gotta do is put a clip with a magnet on it behind your shirt, and you just put them together. So they really stay on your shirt. And the contraption also comes with two adapters, one Lightning and one Type-C, depending on what your phone is. So you can just attach it and then your mic will automatically connect to your phone. So when you film using your camera, process is seamless. You don't have to worry about connecting the mic anymore. So I highly recommend this product. Thank you again, Divya, and let's get back to the show. Now that we're talking about performance on the ground, I think aside from syempre command vote endorsements from local officials, I think Tita Melanie was right kasi she gave a speech sa birthday celebration ni Tito Bam, and she said that we had a secret weapon, a secret weapon that other candidates didn't have. If other candidates had money, they had a lot of control over certain geographies. Kiko Bam had the volunteer base that I think started in 2022.
Sure.
And I think, well, I mean, a lot of candidates have their own volunteers, diba? Pero I think with the Kiko Bam volunteer base, it was well, syempre the network is bigger. You have the team, the main team had less people to feed because everyone was doing their own thing. Like I remember, bigla na lang I see a notification about a pink walk in Makati.
Right.
And parang we weren't very aware of this being organized, but we decided to join, and parang eventually the the team of San Bam was like, oh, say let's join this. Let's have a surrogate come over, and then let's cover the event. Let's feature them, and also parang parang a lot of the organic elements in 2022 they still push through, albeit not to the same extent in 2025.
Right.
And I think that also kind of helped Kiko Bam, syempre alongside all these other reasons, push them above many other candidates.
And I think again it goes to this point that like again our side really needed this win because like I think it's fair to say, right, the what's the term, the dynamism of like the pink movement was a lot more on display in 2022 compared to now.
Yes,
part of that is because it's a presidential election, the stakes feel higher.
Yeah,
but I think like if we were able to win this much with a fraction of the not a small fraction, still a big fraction, but not the complete sort of pink wave that we had in 2022.
Yes,
we're gonna be bringing a lot to the table in 2028. Right? And like people who might have been maybe disappointed and disillusioned after like 2022 and the things that have happened between now and 2022, they see this election, it's like, oh, we can do something, right?
Yes,
that's it is exciting to go into the next few years with that sort of momentum behind you.
I have a question. If we were at maybe Sen Bam at 10th, Sen Kiko at 12th, or maybe only one candidate makes it, you think the state of the pink movement would be the same versus what we have now?
Oh, so I think there would be a lot more organizing necessary to get it to where it needs to be. Right?
Okay.
So like for instance, I thought the rally of Lenny in 2022 in Ateneo after she had lost was very important.
Yes.
Right? Because people needed to hear from her to be like, okay, what's next? Right? And she gave people a path forward there.
Yeah.
I think if the result were a more modest win, or even like something that we would interpret as a loss, then that sort of yung pagsalo, that becomes really important, right? So there should have been something to be like, okay, here's what we think happened, right? And we're gonna work on it, but in 2028 we'll be ready, right? Something like that message would have had to go around. But now that I think it's tangible that we did something, right? And we have something to build on.
Yeah.
It is parang that it doesn't replace organizing at all. Like a lot of organizing still has to be done.
Yeah.
But the like getting people's foot into the door of being interested in 2028, I think that's a lot easier with what we have started now, because you see like with a win this big, right, where we're competitively like the most popular candidates from like other camps, right? Like the writing's on the wall, right? That we have a real shot to have a government that is aligned with our values in 3 years from now, right? So I think people see that, right? People see that.
Yeah, parang pink movement plus are starting to see that,
right?
And it's exciting, but I also think there's a lot that can happen in 3 years.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's gonna be a very fragile situation for everyone.
Of course.
For the pink movement, but also for the administration, the Duterte alliance. What is gonna make? I mean, what are some things to be cautious about in the next 3 years? Okay, I'm thinking. I say we're speaking for the pink movement. So
Right.
what are some things to be cautious about? Like I have some ideas in mind, but I want to get yours first.
Right. So
yeah.
Again, this is spin, don't know anything, right? But like my thinking is like if this election is like 2007, right, where again the Arroyo administration was rejected in the midterms, right? What happened in 2010 was it was a fight over who would be the best alternative to GMA, right? And it was Tito Noy who was viewed to be that way. And importantly, Manny Villar was kind of catching up to Tito Noy like near the start of the campaign.
I remember, yeah.
And sort of the attack on Villar was that he was Villaroyo, right? He was GMA sort of closet candidate, basically, or secret candidate.
Yeah.
It's funny to me that turned out to be like validated many decades later when like Villar and Arroyo were both together in UP. But that's neither here nor there. But like I feel like, and I don't know if like this is actually what happened, but just like my personal narrative of 2010 was like that attack of Villarroyo started to sound really credible when Gibo Chudoro, who was the on paper candidate of GMA, resigned as the president of Lakas. Right. So that happened like in the middle of the
election. Oh,
that happened in the middle of the campaign
I
period.
do not remember that.
And like, okay, so maybe it wasn't that big a deal. That's I think it is. I don't know. But like basically, basically the point being like, what really sunk Villar was that doubt that people, is he actually running with the administration? So I think the challenge for us in 2028 is that because of the vitriol that has occurred between the Marcos and Duterte camps, Duterte can very credibly say that they're an alternative to Marcos, right? I think for us, we're also quite credible.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
I mean, Lenny Robredo went up against Marcos in 2022.
Yeah.
Right. Bam is an Aquino, right?
Yeah.
And while he's very distinct from that whole legacy, free college education, right? He really carved his own path. Aquino's still the surname, right? So that's a very clear. That's still something people remember as antagonistic to Marcos. So we have something to build on, right? But I think we have to be really careful about fighting for the things we believe in, right?
Yes.
And on the occasions that the administration gives us space to do that, take up that space. But we can't let up in terms of trying to present ourselves as an alternative.
Yes.
I think it's very scary if we, while it's important to go up against Duterte because they stand for things that we don't stand for, right? It's also important to be distinct from the administration, to be separate from the administration. So so like there are people who say like, oh, it's time to come together. I don't necessarily agree with that per se. I feel like if this is like 2007, the debate is who will be the best person to replace Marcos.
Yes.
And we want to be that person.
Do you think that will involve some level of, in terms of messaging,
right?
Would that involve some level of away in terms of messaging, like outwardly expressing opposition towards certain issues or certain points?
I think there's a way to do it positively, right? So I mean, we need to stick to our values, right? What are the things that we care about, and we're seeing that at least for Kong Laila and Kong Chaldiokno, right? They're doing that. They're joining like the prosecution team for the impeachment against DP Sara because she did some things that were just so sobrang salungat sa values natin, right? They're just so opposite, right? So like grave threats, your confidential intelligence funds. So I think it's a clear expression of values on one end, but we also need to make clear that those same values have put us in opposition to Marcos as well, right?
Yes.
And you can do that by opposing, but you can also do that by being in a constructive way. Like you can do that constructive, not necessarily collaborative, but in a positive way in the sense of let's push for things on our agenda that Marcos never thought to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Right. Let's push for the free breakfasts that Kiko proposed. Let's push for Akbayan has announced that they're going to push for anti-Endo, which it's interesting because in 2016, all of the politicians, Lenny, Mar included, like they all promised it, but it never really materialized. Digong also, right? But it never materialized legislatively. Yeah. What's interesting about Akbayan is I don't think they talked about anti-Endo that much in the campaign. Yes. But now that they're saying, okay, this is what we want to fight for, right? Yes. And that's something that people have been clamoring for a while, right? So I think it's about picking what are the fights that it's about fighting the fights that really that just matter, period, but the fights that show people these are what we care about. Right? These are the things that we care about. So the next time you have a budget deliberation and the question again comes up, do we cut funding for SUCs? Do we cut funding for computerization and DepEd? That's something that BAM can be like, no, we will not do that. You did that before. I'm here now. I'm not gonna let that fly.
Yeah.
So
And-
those kinds of fights.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you're enjoying, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Eiyo Aquino, EIYOAQUINO on TikTok. Yeah, parang the ultimate vision there is to, well, I think we're talking in the context of the Sarah impeachment, which is like at the heart of the conflict now between the two big factions in the country, and how Kong Laila,
Yeah.
Kong Chel, will be how they can differentiate themselves as, yes, they're part of the prosecution or they're part of the process, but that doesn't automatically make them pro administration.
Because in the end, it's like it again, it's their values that made them
It's-
choose this, and it's
yes.
those same values that
Yeah.
will get them into fights with the administration as well somewhere down the line.
Yes.
But what I will say though is like we're talking about the new like the phases, right? Like,
Mhm,
there's
yeah,
a new
yeah.
phase right now. I feel like impeachment is the last part of this kadiliman kasamaan phase.
Yeah.
And it'll go the way it'll go, right? I think it's safe to say the bean counting in terms of like numbers for impeachment are not very good, right? In terms of like who won. But I'm one of the people who signed on to like the first impeachment complaint.
Yes,
I've
yeah.
seen I've studied like not a lawyer, but I've studied to the extent that I can, like the evidence or the arguments being made against VP Sara. I think they're very strong arguments, right?
Mhm,
So it could go. I know it'll go the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the end. That is going to be the end of that phase. At the end of that phase, I think what people are going to see is, okay, there's not much left to this Marcos administration. It's a lame duck term. He's unpopular. Maybe he'll swing back. I don't know, but current trends doesn't look like it.
Mhm.
So now it's like after that phase, how are we going to show ourselves as the best alternative, as the best solution to the problems that people see with the Marcos administration? And I think it's by getting into those fights that people care about, that will really help people, right? So defending the education budget, pushing anti-endo, free breakfasts, and a whole bunch of other things that we can like figure out. Maybe restoring the PhilHealth budget would be good, right?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that point specifically yet, but I think that's another thing that people maybe will start to, if they haven't yet, that's something people will really feel in the foreseeable, that PhilHealth got it this way, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah. That's actually a win-win for the Filipinos,
Hmm.
because from what we're getting now, the way to get rid of this long-standing conflict is by showing genuine for the genuine opposition to show actual results that will benefit them. And I think and hopefully the Congress and the Senate will work with Bam Kiko, Kong Laila, Kong Chel, in pushing for these things, and hopefully not a lot of blocking occurs. I think that's one thing I'm praying for.
Not a lot
In
of
terms
blocking, but I think like even in the face of that, like we need to be, I think a lot of bata-bata sa langit, right? Pero I think like a lot of our side, we get the sickness of confusing what do we want with what is possible.
Yes.
Right? Like sometimes we say that this is like I don't want, we shouldn't do that because it doesn't seem likely. But like that's an important consideration, sure. But let's be clear first. What we want. What is the ideal highest version of what we want?
Yes.
And then we study like, okay,
The
here's the
feasibility.
political situation, the feasibility.
Yeah.
But don't lose sight of what you want, right? Don't
naman.
close your imagination off to like
naman.
this is what we want the most. So yeah, like in terms of like blocking and whatever, right? That's going to, that might happen. Like whatever entrenched interest you might like run up against it. But I think it's important for our side to communicate about not just what's possible in the short term, but like communicate what's our vision, what are we working towards. That if we're blocked now, then hey, put more of us in here and we'll be able to deliver.
Is there something from that you noticed from our side that you think might be a point of contention?
Point of contention. Well, I think the immediate thing is, our side believes, I think, in the value of every Filipino, right? And like in the case of impeachment, at least in terms of like the grade that's sort of dropped by the vice president, that flies in the face of that.
Yes.
And so I think impeachment is the right thing to do for our side. But again, what will be difficult is like impeachment, unfortunately, is seen as like a political operation by a lot of people on the Duterte side, and maybe a lot of people maybe just not really on the side, but like looking at what's going on.
Yes.
They see it that way because the people that were supposed to fight for impeachment, like you're in the lower house, you're the Speaker of the House, they've done a lot of dubious things, like on the side of impeachment and in close proximity to impeachment, right? So I think like while for me it's very clear that fighting to impeach VP Sara is like is something that the opposition should be going for. I can understand how that will be a hard thing to communicate when all of these other forces in favor of impeachment are doing it for like whatever narrow self-interest is defined, right? So I think that's a real challenge. How do we let our values come across? And I think the opportunity there is like we can be consistent, we can fight and be consistent with our principles, which is like, Chelle and Laila have a very different role from what Senator Risa, Senator Tito Bam, Senator Kiko will have now, right? Which is Chelle and Laila have seen Senator Laila and si Kong Laila, sorry, I have to get used to that. In particular, was our spokesperson for the first complainant, right? So she's quite aware of like a lot of the arguments that we have to impeach VP Sara, and I think she will present those arguments in the best way possible, right? So she will fight it that hard, right? But the senators have a different role, and I think it was very wise that, not just wise, but just the right thing to do.
Yes.
For like Senator Risa, Senator Kiko, and Tito Bam to all be of the point of view that we're not going to comment on this, we're not going to prejudge this case because we will be judges. So I think we have a really clear way to show people that politics can be more than just about self-interest, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's just self-interest, right? Parang why are Chell and Laila there? Where it's like, but impeachment could be politically different. Why
be? It's more than picking a sports team,
right?
It's different from. It can be different from picking a side. You
Yeah,
don't have to pick. You don't always have to pick a side. Sometimes politics is just about following the process,
Right.
Following a process and following your principles,
Right.
And I think that's what our movement is about naman in the first place.
And I think that's the
diba?
contrast, right? Because
Yeah.
the whole narrative of kadiliman kasamaan is pumili ka, right?
Oo.
Side with one, side with the other.
Yes.
And I think it's a good thing, I think, that we were able to evade that sort of false choice. Right?
Yeah.
And we didn't side with one or the other because neither are really aligned with what we believe in. And now we can show, okay, this is what we believe in. Politics can be more than just picking a side.
Yes. Right? That's good. That's a good insight, I think. And I think moving forward, the for the senators at least that were just elected, at the end of the day, their role as impeachment judges are based on the idea they are impartial. They are judges, so they must be impartial. They must treat evidence fairly, and so I don't think expecting a clear stance from them prematurely is the right thing to do. And I think Sen Bam, Sen Kiko, and Sen Reese they're gonna conduct that fairly. Sorry, I also want to get to another point about Tito Bam because I wanna move on to talking about you and I guess your work personally.
Yeah.
Pero I also want to talk about another reason why I think he won. And see, if I'm not sure if you're familiar with Alan Herman.
Sure.
Actually, he's a family friend.
Yeah.
He's like a really smart, brilliant political strategist. I'm a big fan. I keep listening to him, and he talks about the formula for a successful campaign. Man, there's the message, and there's the machinery. So these are the three things you need to win an election, and I think Tito Bam really hits all three. But I want to emphasize the man part. Like Tito Bam, I think was able to capture that idea that he's of good standing, and it was communicated very well during the campaign. I mean, for one, you had a lot of stories circulating online about him, him in college. You know, it was Tita Nines Terol who made cuento. They were from opposing parties in Ateneo and in the student council. And yet when Tita Nines was suffering with but she was struggling, sorry, with managing her time and all that, Tito Bam actually like went to her and tried to help her out. Imagine they were already opponents, and yet he did that. And I think that says a lot about his character and how he views the human person in general. And then there's also another story about him really really helping out a friend of his, when
Blue, right?
Si Blue, yes. The scholarship that he initially gave when he found out this friend was struggling financially. Eventually gave the scholarship back. And I think that that a testament to his character was evident as well in the fact that his whole family was very active. Both of us part of that, very active in the campaign. I mean, you had, well, of course, Tita Timmy, Sen Bam's wife, who is like a boss lady through and through, running the campaign like crazy, with Rory and Coco going around. Imagine, these are kids campaigning for their dad. And Tita Melanie, who's going around. Even Tita Bolsi was went to Tarlac, I think.
Went to Negros also in like
Negros.
one leg.
Oh, parang it was Tita Bolsi, Auntie Jackie, who's also very active. Parang I remember how we went to the kickoff rally together. And then Tita Rizel was also there. Siyempre si Tito PV, brother of Tita Bam, he was my boss basically during the campaign. And
like Tito Dennis, I think was also like in a lot of the events. Like
yes, Tito Dennis parang would also represent the Bam as a surrogate, with Tita Nines also giving. I think she even spoke at a women's empowerment or women's entrepreneurship event for San Bam. And syempre tayong dalawa, we were both surrogates. What was it like for you being a surrogate? I know you surrogated for 2 events.
So a couple. So one was like a forum type deal. The longest trip I had to make. I had to walk 5 minutes from my house to be at the house.
What a struggle.
So that was one. Then like I did maybe one or two a couple smaller other ones. But like again, like I said, like and Tito Bam and I had this conversation early on. He's asking for help, and I said, "Yeah, I'll go wherever you need me to go." But like, I also wanted to spend a lot of time with working on ML. Right?
Okay.
So I think like towards especially the last few weeks of the campaign, which were pretty critical, I was spending a lot more time. At that point, there's one event now where it's funny. There's like one day where like I had to they had asked me to surrogate for Tito Bam in like a college.
Okay.
But I had to be like in an ML event like an hour later.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, can you make it like 30 minutes earlier? So hindi talaga. So I wasn't able to go to the college. In the ML event, Tito Bam surrogate was Tito Dennis.
Oh, okay.
I was there for ML, and then he was there for.
Oh wow.
So it's kind of fun. So yeah, like definitely like surrogating for like being surrogate for Tito Bam. It's not like I thought it would be like, okay, parang I have to spend time one or the other. But it turned out when I was campaigning for ML, like when I'd go house to house, right? And like the most effective way to campaign was that I'd be there in a Bam shirt. And I would be introduced as the pamangkin of Tito Bam.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like when they say, oh, si Bam, sure vote ko na yan, mananalo yan. I'd be like, ay ma'am, sir, may party list na po ba kayo?
Galing.
So I
Galing
think
naman.
yeah, so it's really and again it speaks to Tito Bam, right? That
Yes.
in a
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
like at least in that ground experience of mine, he didn't just like bring himself, but like he brought ML with him. I imagine like a lot of
Yeah.
Akbayan's votes kind of were by the association to Tito Bam,
Yes.
right? So yeah, that was what I
Nice.
went through.
That's nice. That's nice.
Mm.
Parang the reception on the ground was really, they know who Tito Bam is.
Right, right.
They know he will be good. I'm surprised that not a lot of people remember the attacks from 2019 because that's what I remember.
Right.
And I remember like feeling so disillusioned with all the attacks and seeing all the people that believed in the rumors and all. But then um I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot of positive reception
Yeah.
on the ground. Ako naman I went to places all over the Philippines. In Luzon, let's start from the north. I went to Tuguegarao, I went to Cagayan,
Mm.
to Cagayan, and then Isabela, Santiago, Isabela, Aritao, Nueva Vizcaya. There was a Panagsisibuyas festival. I had to speak there.
Right.
And a lot of the crowds were just really like, they really came with positive responses. Where else did I go to? Pampanga with caravan with volunteers. It was a volunteer led event.
Right.
As in they really wanted it to happen. So I was with Sina Gabe Pineda, a bunch of Sina Justin Dizon, a bunch of influencers I already knew actually prior. Especially Gabe because I follows TikTok. Shout out you guys. And then I also went to Cavite, Dasmariñas. And then we were also in Bacolod and Bohol, Jensan, Coronadal, that's what I was mentioning kanina. Parang all the all the house to houses I went to or all the forests I spoke in, they were all I hardly heard anything negative.
Right.
I think
right.
the closest to something negative I heard was or I experienced was basically ignoring me, which is like net zero.
I'll take it.
I'll
I'll take it.
I
Compared
will,
to like 2019.
yeah, like I will take it. But thankfully, 2019 when I surrogate, it was just like 2 or 3 times lang. Parang wala namang booze or anything. Thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very it was a surprise, and I was pleasantly surprised
Right.
with the reception this election. So aside from we'll stick to the election first before we get to you. But aside from Tito Bam's campaign overall, parang what are some other learnings you had about the results of the election?
Oh gosh. So this is the first time that what's my track experience? What's my track record with elections? So the first time I like really campaigned was like 2010 for Tito Noy, right? 2013 and 2016 I was not quite as active for Tito Bam in 2013 because like I was just starting with no, I remember. Like so I was starting to work. I did like a few months in NCAS before I left for my master's. And I remember like NCAS thing was like, we don't want to be, we're Aquino Foundation, Aquino is president. We don't want to like leverage that for, we don't want to leverage that for anything. So we're like,
that's good.
we were like super low key at the time. Like,
Okay.
so I didn't end up becoming too involved in Tito Bam's campaign then. By 2016 and 2019, I was teaching full time with UP. And as part of the civil service, you're not really supposed to campaign for anyone. Right? Then, so the first time I actually did campaign again, like seriously, since 2010 was 2022 for Lenny. And then I was really just purely a volunteer, right? I couldn't do anything except like go house to house, right?
Same.
2025 was interesting for Tito Bam yun, surrogate volunteer, right? But for ML, like I did a little bit of everything, right? So we helped like organize the sorties of Konglai in Tarlac, right? Then I endorsed them, right? So we did like an ad talking about like how
I remember that.
how basically like si Senla is tinutuloy yung parang tinutuloy na yung laban nila Lolo Lola and Tito Noy.
Yes.
Then we on like one of the last days, right? I was asked to like look at some of the numbers, and I think that's what I learned the most, like how these ground operations, right? If you're an academic, you very rarely will you get an insight into like what it looks like in the war rooms of these campaigns, right? And how like what's the reality of figuring out, okay, what is my vote on the ground, right? And how does that bump against like the real, how does that bump against the surveys, how does that bump against the results?
Yes.
And I remember seeing I remember being really worried about the surveys, seeing those numbers, and then my line of questioning there was just, how sure are you of these numbers that you're showing in front of me? Because like, and these are like just the on the ground from our volunteers, not even like with like political alliances or anything, just on the ground numbers, right? So I was asking, how sure are you of these numbers, right? Are these, when did you get them? Did you get them like a day ago? Did you get them a week ago? Because like a week ago, maybe someone approached them and like took away from them. Because if you're sure about these, I'm pretty sure we're safe, right? But none of the surveys have said we're safe. So I was thinking when I came home from that, like from just that like session, it was like, if we pull this off, I would have learned so much about elections that I didn't know like last year. Because like the sum total of my knowledge of elections prior to last Monday was like, whoever Pulse Asia in particular says, well, they're probably gonna win, right?
Yeah.
Now that's all out the window. So it's just I feel like this is the most I've learned from, I think, in an election, and that's not quite like, there's still so much more to learn, right? But like this is probably the most the most new I've picked up from about politics.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you're enjoying, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Eiyo Aquino, Eiyo Aquino, on TikTok. You think the problem with the surveys and how it was, the problem of it being so far off from the actual results, was that a problem of methodology, or were there other factors that
there's something methodological that you will probably be able to tweak, but I guess the way I think about it is like, there's a survey bug that's been hitting all of these survey firms around the world since 2016, right? And in a way I thought like, I don't know, did Pulse and SWS figure out the magic method that does not get hit by the survey bug? But then they got hit by this one, right? So I don't know how to start attacking the problem in terms of methodology. Definitely there's something there to be fixed. I will say also, like, the people who say that like SWS has like, Pulse Asia has soul searching to do, it's the first time that they've gotten things wrong since 2004, right? So one mistake in 20 years, it's like, it's kind of like, if you're into statistics, right, that's like a 0.95% chance. That's like, that happens, right? You're allowed. The stakes are high in every election, right? But you're gonna make a mistake once in a while. That's not necessarily something to beat yourself up about, but it is something to like figure out, how do we fix it, right? And I don't know, one school of thought is, ayun, are we in a world where, because that's, I think, what happened in the US. It's like, basically in the US, Trump always is underestimated by surveys because a lot of his voters just don't want to answer surveys, right? Here, are we in a world where our voters don't like answering surveys? Or are we in a world where, we're talking about the college, sort of like the Gen Z sort of the Gen Z arrival, right? Are Gen Z people less likely to answer surveys because they're not at home, because something else, right? Is there something about the way the question is asked, which I don't know? It's always been asked that way. I feel like there isn't. So there's I don't know where to begin, right? So it's, I wouldn't say unsubscribe from, not that like you're subscribed, but like unsubscribe from like Pulse Asia, SWS, or whatever, right? There's still really good people there who really care about like what they like, delivering something accurate, right? And they're gonna try to figure it out. But at the same time, it's exciting to be in their position, but if my livelihood depended on it, it's also very stressful to be in their position. Like, they have to figure out like,
especially after Monday.
How do we fix this? And I from where I'm standing, I don't know the first step is to like start figuring it out.
What about sampling? You think there's a
Well, okay, so sampling is
Sampling.
like so the way SWS does SWS and Pulse copied SWS, Okta largely copies Pulse. I'm a little less familiar with Numero. But the way sampling happens is like, yeah, they'll do like they cut the country into four, right? So Balance Luzon, NCR, Visayas, and Mindanao. And then they'll pick provinces to go into, and then bigger provinces will be more likely to be sampled, right? Because
Okay.
like bigger provinces have more people, so
Yes.
they have to be more likely to be sampled. And then like they repeat that process for municipalities, then they repeat that for not exactly barangays, but they have like they're able to divide municipalities into like particular districts for the survey. And then once a district is chosen, they will find like a map of the municipality and find a way to sample from there. What are the 5 households we'll get from this place?
So basically, in one survey, not all. I mean, there's only a certain number of municipalities that are
Right. Yeah. So
represented.
not every single municipality
Will be represented in
right?
one survey.
So like so like you'll see, and like a theory of mine of why like Leni Robredo's approval rating when she was vice president would go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, is like, maybe basically it's like it's not guaranteed that the Bicol region will be included in like a survey, right?
Yes,
So
true.
one might imagine it'll go up when you get slightly more Bicol, it'll go down when you get slightly less Bicol.
Yes.
But it should be going that way, right?
Yeah.
And the truth will be somewhere in the middle of that. This one is like Bam never hit second, right?
Mhm.
Bam, like whatever Tito Bam's up down was, it never got like he never
got
ended
that
up second.
far. Yeah.
Although the other thing is like, because like we were looking it up earlier, and like we didn't want to get into like the nitty gritty of percentage. But what was like Tito Bam's final percentage? Do you remember?
I think it was definitely less than 30.
Right, because like I was kind of guessing based on Pulse Asia that he would finish at around 30%.
Yeah.
It's just that 30% translated to like rank 11 or 10 rather than rank 2, right? And Barry Gutierrez, I think on Christian Esguerra's show, was making that point that a lot of people, there seems to be a lot of undervoting because like 20 million usually doesn't get you to like second place.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you start unpacking like
20, 29, no, 30%, 29.95.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was guessing like, so I remember what I did was like, how did I do it? So it's like, so I saw that Tito Bam was like 25 on Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 25 on Pulse. Yeah. I generally think that we tend to finish on the better side of margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
This is so unscientific, right? But I also tried, I did this with Lenya and I wasn't too far off either. Right? But I tend to think we finish on the better side of margin of error. So +2.
Okay.
And then INC is like around, people have asked, yes, like I've seen low estimates of like the high ends of the 100,000, like the high hundreds of thousands, and then I've seen high end of like 2 million. In my mind, it's like 1.5, which with 56 million voters would translate to around 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
So like calling that 3%, that's around 30. Right?
Yeah.
So INC, since Pulse Asia was before INC.
Uh-huh.
So +3 for INC, +2 because like we'll finish on the better side of the margin of error, 30, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, 30 would have landed him at around 12 for 11.
Yes.
Right?
True.
So the other narrative of like there being a lot of undervoting, seems to also be quite compelling. Right? A lot of people didn't vote for these people who are placing above Tito Bam in terms of like surveys, like your Manny Pacquiao's, your Bong Revillas.
Actually, I remember nga the surveys, their percentages were like huge. They were like 40, 50%.
Yeah.
And yet here they're below 30.
Yeah, so that's a real mystery, right?
Yeah.
That's like, so we were talking about it earlier, right? So I mean, going away from Tito Bam, right? I wonder if like, so there were a lot of complaints this election about how sensitive the machines were to like the marking, right?
Yeah.
And like the so this came out last election. This might have come out also this election, but like how, because the marks for party list are, you've seen it, right? They're visible on the other side. That supposedly that shouldn't be a problem because the dots won't align, right?
Yes.
Like you're shading, let's say ML will not result in a vote for, where's that on the ballot? Someone in like
someone that
on
area.
that area of the ballot,
Yeah.
right?
Mirror.
Somewhere in the right side of the senatorial ballot, like say for Camille Villar, let's say for example, right? It shouldn't, because like the blots aren't aligned.
Yes.
But you do have a lot of anecdotes about how, I swear I didn't undervote. Why did the receipt tell me or I swear I didn't overvote?
Yeah,
Why
I
did the
heard that.
machine tell me-
I
why
heard
did
a
the
lot of
machine
that
tell me I
also.
overvoted? And the it's going around on social media now that Namfrel's count of the overvote is like something like 1.5 million people, and for party lists it's like 3.3 million. It's kind of a lot, right? Again, it doesn't explain everything. Like Tito Bam and even Sen Kiko definitely are more than like 1.5 million votes ahead of like your Bong Revillas and your whatever. So it's not just the undervote, but maybe that played a role. And again, maybe it really might just be people wanting to express dissatisfaction with the administration, that they maybe, because another interesting statistic is like somewhere between 20 and 30% of people decide in the last month of the campaign, right? So May, the last 10 days or so of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Did a big chunk of people suddenly in that period decide, yeah, Marcos is bad, I'm not gonna vote for any of his candidates? And did that bring down a whole bunch of like the Bong Revillas of the world, the Abby B. Nice, your Manny Pacquiao's? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's interesting. So actually, I didn't realize. Sorry, nagbubuhat ng sariling bangko, but I didn't realize that like he was actually that close to 30.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I just say, I love how I can get so many numbers from you. I love all the numbers.
They might not be that accurate in my head, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. Because my dad does this every ano. What's your fearless?
Okay.
Like, what's your fearless forecast for ano?
Uh-huh.
So I remember, I don't know if I told him he'd do 30% or if I said he'd do 12, but I remember thinking he'd end 12, and I remember the way I calculated was, okay, he's 25 in polls, and then plus INC plus the positive. We'll finish in the positive end of margin of error. We might hit 30.
Yeah.
Because with Lenny, it was similar. She did 24 in pulse, or 23 in pulse, and I thought, okay, better end of margin of error is 25. And then at the time, I thought undecided would swing. There's like about 5% undecided left. So she would do like, she'd get like, I was thinking she'd overperform in the undecided. So she'd get half of that. Maybe Bong Bong would get the other half. I don't remember if I was right about Bong Bong, but I guessed so Lenny, I think, finished 28, and I guessed 27. She finished.
Yeah.
So
We usually overperform the surveys, basically.
that's just gut feel, right? I don't know if like that's usual or not, but like, like if you have to make a bet, right? And like sometimes like you just have to like, I mean,
if you're gonna follow the trend,
there's room for like there's room for kutob.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
In cases like that.
Another...
I'm not saying I'm not
Go
saying
lang.
that's how you predict these things, right?
Yeah.
It's just that apparently it worked for Bam, and I remember it worked really well for Lenny this last one. So I'm gonna use the same method in the next election, and when it's wrong, I'm gonna stop using it.
Wait, I'll adjust the camera.
Sige lang.
Parang
When it's wrong, I'll stop using it.
Ayun, that's better. Yeah. Ayun. Wait, did it go? Did it zoom?
I'll take na lang.
Zoom. Go lang. Bio break.
Sige.
Okay. So another thing I found interesting then was Heidi Mendoza getting 8 million votes.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
And beating Willie Revilla, man. So this is where I would have lost a lot of money. I thought he was pasok.
I thought
No. So I thought he would be number one.
Oh.
right? Because I remember in 2022, all of our guys were hating on Robin Padilla,
Yes.
right? There's so many posts being like, how can you choose Robin Padilla over Chelde?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And the posts emerged again, pitting Kiko Pangilinan against Willie Repilan. So I was like, this is such a losing strategy. Don't do this. And
Yeah.
at the back of my mind, I was so afraid it's going to be Willie number one.
Yeah.
So that one I'm completely washed up. I got that completely wrong, right?
Like apparently the memes
thankfully.
worked.
Thankfully. But yeah,
Yeah.
so Heidi Mendoza
Yeah,
beats Willie Repilan. And I think so this is where you get the sense that beyond sort of Tito Bam's just the excellence of his campaign and his really concrete track record with Free College, right? Here's where you start to get the sense that maybe there is a pink vote sort of making its presence known, right? And it might be youth, it might be more than just youth.
Yeah.
Because so Heidi Mendoza, a group that I'm part of called Tindig Pilipinas is endorsed 3 senatorial candidates. I'm not saying that we convinced anyone to vote a certain way or another, but a lot of similar groups were saying Heidi Bam Kiko, Heki Bam. Right?
Heki Bam, yeah, I remember that.
Sort of thing. I have a lot of friends on the left, and their pet candidate was Lupi Espiritu, right? And also, I like Lupi Espiritu a lot. He says a lot of nice things about Tito, Lolo Ninoy.
Yes,
right.
He
Tito
even,
Noy
I
not
think
quite.
he what do you call this? He speaks like your lolo.
So you know how the thing about Luke is that I have a friend on his campaign staff, and I didn't know anything about Luke in 2022.
Okay.
What he did, what this friend did was they sent me a video of Luke Espiritu reciting verbatim an excerpt from Lolo Ninoy's LA speech.
Wow!
Right.
Oh my
So
god!
that kind of he's that kind of Ninoy fan.
Wow!
Right? He knows more about Lolo Ninoy than you and me combined.
Oh my gosh!
Right? So that's so I like Luke Espiritu. Right?
Oh, that's nice.
But he kind of ran ahead of the pack for a lot of the candidates on the left. Right? He did 6 million. The next person traditionally associated with the left did something like 4 million.
Okay.
So I feel this organic campaign, the kakamping switch, we knew that what was up with Tito Bams and Kiko, and it seems we delivered big for them, right?
Yes.
But I think just 2 senators, right? People were looking for more, right? And yeah, there's this constituency that's I'm definitely not with Duterte, but I'm definitely not with Marcos either. Who else is up there, right? And a lot of the chatter just online, and Heidi Mendoza herself would admit to you how much did she spend on the campaign, right?
Yeah.
So it was really brought by this just interest drummed up online in these networks that were preserved from 2022.
Yes.
That probably got her to where she was. And what's very exciting to me about Heidi Mendoza, I realized that she said things now she's not terribly interested in running again, but she finished 21st. Shell Diokno finished 20th in 2022, and he led Akbayan into its most successful.
Yeah.
I mean, they only did 3 seats one other time. I don't know if they've ever hit number 1, but definitely there's just raw numbers of votes, the most successful campaign Akbayan has ever led, right? There's a lot you can do with a Heidi Mendoza. Right?
Next ML.
I wouldn't discount it, right? I wouldn't discount it.
Yeah, but in fairness, see, Heidi's campaign she didn't have a big budget.
Yeah.
She had we were in Caloocan one time. We were campaigning as a surrogate for Tita Bam, and then we were with Councilor Marge Barreto, and we were campaigning with a bunch of. There were a lot of dedicated Heidi Mendoza supporters, as in volunteers. They were all in uniform, purple shirts, as in my logos na and all, and wow, they were very, very active, very, very good. And I think, for someone that is fairly new in the political scene, to have that kind of volunteerism already with the kind of budget you have and all, parang to have that kind of volunteerism already says a lot. And then And then syempre, you can't back that up. You have to back that up with numbers. So 8 million
Right.
votes. It's a lot of potential for
It's
her.
something. It's something,
There's a
right?
lot of
So,
potential
and I
for
think
her.
like with Ma'am Heidi, like, so one is, yeah, she had such a strong volunteer base. Two, she had a really good social media game, right? For
Yes,
like
also.
for someone who I don't think she's definitely not a social media native. I don't know who's
Uh-huh.
running her social media or anything, but like really good content. Like I love the pictures of her like personally packing a lot of her campaign materials, or like sleeping in the airport going to the
Yes,
national.
yes,
It's like
yes.
it's such a what kind of senator runs like this, right? But like this is so
Yeah.
like just speaking to her passion. And then the second thing is I think she just has a really good narrative. She knows how to talk about corruption, right?
Yeah.
Because like, you know, Tito Noy was like kung walang korap, walang mahirap, and like she was coming after GMA was like such a everyone perceived to be corrupt, right? Since then, like I've honestly become a bit less interested in running a campaign purely about corruption. Because like, you know, I want something more positive. What can you do for me beyond just like being a team? But Heidi Mendoza is so good at talking about corruption.
She's an auditor.
Well, yeah, an auditor.
Oh, wow.
But like, it's not just technical. I remember like she had one interview where she was explaining yung corruption na, ano ba sinabi niya? Parang, ano dati, yung kapatid ko, parang, or nung nasa probinsya kami, parang may isang lata doon na doon nila nilagay yung baon naming magkakapatid. So isang araw, medyo naisip ko na parang, well, parang gusto ko lang, kinuha ko lang yung baon ng kapatid ko.
Yeah.
Tapos I'm paraphrasing, I don't know if this is exactly the story. Pero nung umuwi na kami sa klase, nalaman ko, hindi nakakain ng lunch yung kapatid ko. So yun yung ginagawa ng corruption, di ba? Pag may kinuha ka na hindi sa'yo, may isang hindi makakakain sa pamilya mo, sa lipunan mo, di ba?
Yeah.
So that talking, and like ako, like, since again, I was like involved in like the impeachment process, we'd have to talk about things like confidential funds. I remember explicitly using that story to explain why this is like why I think we can make the argument that, you know, this is an impeachable offense, because other than just spending it on whatever, parang may isang estudyante na hindi parang nawala siyang classroom dahil kung saan nilista yung pera ng DepEd. So something to that effect, right? So she, I feel like, you know, like as a candidate, you really need to be, it's not just like I can give you talking points and then you will deliver them and that's it, right? Like what you say has to be, you have to really believe in what you say to get people to like listen to you. And I think Heidi Mendoza really knows how to talk about corruption because she is an auditor, but because like she has just, it's really something she's passionate about, and it shows, right? And it was, I mean, rewarded not with a victory, but with a lot of potential.
Yeah. Parang my perception, well, syempre, she, based on your kwento kanina, parang she understands corruption so much that she can explain. Usually when you understand something very well, you can explain to anyone.
Right.
Diba? I don't know, that's something I noticed with really like good, like people really good in their field. But I think she also spoke to a growing sentiment that, okay, like the Philippines generally naman is corrupt, pero syempre with the budget in 2025, naging issue siya.
Right.
A lot of people are calling it the most corrupt budget.
Exactly.
So she was speaking to that need.
Right.
She wanted to address that need, and that's why from virtually nothing, eventually she got 8 million votes.
And I think that hammers home the point that what people are looking for is really an alternative to this administration.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and one more thing I noticed then, talking to kakampinks in 2025, they ask, "Oh, who are you gonna vote for?" It's always Kiko, Bam, Heidi, because a lot of people already associated her with the pink movement.
Right.
So I think she was able to penetrate that the pink movement very well.
Right.
Albeit not to the point of victory, but at least 8 million votes is a crazy amount from starting.
And she was top 12 in a whole bunch of places.
Yes.
Right?
Oh.
I couldn't name them off the top of my head, but like I've seen like Heidi Mendoza.
Maraming NCR cities.
Right.
She was top 5 even.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanna yap about you. So what is your current involvement in the
well, syempre you're in NCAF,
Yeah.
but you're also involved in the broader movement to preserve the legacy of EDSA, the
Yeah.
People Power Revolution, and
Yeah.
the values that it's espoused. What are you doing for?
Well, basically, like NCAF is the main medium to do that, right? So we just reopened their museum last
Yes.
February. Reception's been pretty good. Like, so the sort of gimmick that Tito Dan de Chalco came up with
Yes.
was like to build the museum around choices, right? What are the
Mhm.
choices that Lolo Ninoy, Lola Cory, Tito Noy had to sort of had to face like somewhere down the road, and putting people in those shoes and getting them to really live in just live in the shoes of Lola and Lola and Tito Noy for a little while and feel what it's like to have been there. So I think the reception has been pretty good there. And then in terms of like EDSA and stuff, I'm part of a group called the it's a mouthful to say, Buhayang People Power Campaign Network. It used to be Buhayang EDSA,
Yes.
which rolls off the tongue better, but it really alienates people outside of Metro Manila. So Buhayang People Power Campaign Network, right? So we organize the People Power anniversary, and I think and also we do things for August 21, particularly for Lolo Ninoy's death anniversary, and September 21, the commemoration of martial law. We're doing something similar. Our meeting has kind of been stalled because like a lot of us are not as this group, but involved in other groups involved with the election. So we have it's been a while since we've been able to sit down and like get back to work on these things. But definitely the context of these big red letter days have a particular significance in this year, because like the next hearing of President Duterte in the ICC is on September 23, the actual day that martial law was declared, and 2 days after the on paper declaration.
Yes.
So the commemoration of martial law, again, it's very it speaks to this weird time we're in, where one day in a way it speaks to a weird time, but in a way it speaks to like how like it really is like kadiliman kasamaan, right? So September 21, you commemorate the day that we were placed under martial law, and that was the start of all of these unjust arrests, killings, whatever, right? Then September 23, it is the day that it's the next phase in the justice process for all of the people victimized under President Duterte. So we're thinking how do we speak to both of these things? A lot of the country, and I think we're getting out of that framing now because of this election, but a lot of the countries has thought of the last 3 years as kadiliman versus kasamaan, kailangan nating pumili. And now, in a way, the election helps us tell the story more. No, these are both wrong, right? And there were people who stood against both. And there were people who were victimized by both. And we honor those people, the ones who sacrificed a lot against Duterte and against Marcos. So we're thinking of so that's September 21, September 23. August 21 is the death anniversary of Lolo Ninoy. August 17 is the death anniversary of Kian de los Santos, who was one of the...
Oh, really?
Yes, right. Because I remember...
August 17?
17, if I'm not mistaken. Because if I remember correctly, when we were in Manila Memorial for Lolo Ninoy's death anniversary that year, it was in this sort of like... Everyone there was thinking of Kian, right, on that day. So we're thinking like if we can make that whole 5-week period like something about justice for all.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you're enjoying, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Eiyo Aquino, EIYOAQUINO on TikTok.
I think we were talking earlier like how this impeachment is probably the last phase of the katiliman kasamaan sort of phase of our politics, right?
Yeah.
And I think now like the task of of not just the political opposition, but just like our side of society, or our the people who believe in the things we believe in, is to show that again there is a set of values that condemns kadiliman just as much as kasamaan, right? And perhaps beyond just honoring the people who fought these two forces, and honoring the people who were, and remembering the people who were victimized by these two forces, we can also show that, again, if the eyes of the country are on the democratic opposition, we can show what the alternative looks like.
Okay, I see. So
Yeah.
so that's the broader your broader vision for the movement.
Yeah.
That is people power plus
Yeah.
pink
How it's
in
connected. How
general.
it's connected.
And
And
it's
it's
all
not the
connected.
it's a small part of the sort of the project for 2028, right? But it's the part that I happen to not quite be in charge of, but I have a lot of I have um I have a lot of ability to affect, right?
Yeah.
So, and the other big thing is, of course, EDSA's 40th anniversary is next year.
Next year.
And honestly, we were saying before, I'm just remembering now, we were saying before that it's going to be really weird to do a celebration of EDSA where we're all still kind of sad, but problem solved.
Problem
right?
solved. So are there any plans now for the 40th?
There's been some very initial discussions. Like, we were encouraged by how many schools chose to cancel, or if not cancel, like Ateneo chose to do some particularly meaningful celebration
Yes, I remember that.
for Feb 25. So we're hoping that we can just sit a bunch of schools and schools, yes, but other stakeholders as well together to like plan something really meaningful for the 25th next year. But it's still very abstract. Kailangang maitawid muna yung sa August and September. But we're working on it.
Okay. How long? Sorry, random lang. Pero how long did you work on the museum? Because I remember 2022
Museum.
pa lang we were
Yeah.
already fixing documents.
Right. Actually, that was kind of an independent project. I mean, some of the stuff we found did find its way to the museum, but like originally, yeah, there's just these boxes and boxes of Lolo Ninoy and Lola Cory's stuff stored in the museum that aren't really sorted, and I kind of have to get back to work on that.
So di pa tapos.
Yeah, because like we would
Hit
do
me
like
up if
what,
you need
one
help.
box, 2 boxes per every time we're there. Like
Yeah.
we're there just like once a week, so it takes a while, right?
I remember
So-
nga that one time we went. I think I pulled an all-nighter because of a project or something,
Yeah.
or maybe I was kind of sick pa. So I went, and then when the boxes came out, they were all so dusty because they were from like the 80s and 90s, and I was like, and parang I started sneezing, parang my allergies came
No,
out.
I know. I remember that
That
now.
was
yeah,
so fun.
No,
No, I
but-
think I eventually slept on the couch.
yeah, no, but I mean, like, I would not be surprised if, di naman, this might be but like, part of me wouldn't be surprised if like the next COVID is like in one of those boxes, right? Like, it's that old, right?
Oh, I hope not.
So, right.
But let me know if you need help with that. We can
Right.
get back to it.
Sure. But yeah, so that was a separate thing. I think at the end of that year, since I was like 2020, I want to say 2 or 3, or 22 or 23, right? But at the end of that year, we closed the museum to start like renovations in earnest, and like the first
Okay.
year of it was just fixing the physical space, right?
Mhm.
So we weren't really active in figuring out how to present the exhibition yet. It's probably midway through 2023, maybe a little bit towards. I don't know if it was before or after the death anniversary of Lolo Ninoy in 2023, where okay, the physical space is done. Let's figure out like what's it gonna look like now. And yun, so si Tito Daan in a Zoom meeting, I remember very specifically. Like there's a Zoom meeting, and yeah, it took me a while to finish the outline of like, okay, here are all of the story beats, or here are all of the bullets in the stories of Lola, Lola, and Tito Noy that we want to hit. And yeah, that took me a while to work on, but I finally finished it like at the end of the year, either 23 or 24. And then Tito Dan was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. How do we frame it, right? And then he was the one who says, yeah, why don't we make it about choice, right? And then there can be like yun, parang their doors and whatever. And from there, it's like, okay, then what do we put in this door? What do we put in that door? So we took off from there. There were some changes from the initial outline, like the way I had framed it. Although what ended up happening was better, but the way I had framed it was, so one choice was Lolo Ninoy flying home from Boston versus staying in Boston, and then the next one was like Lola Cory choosing to run for president or choosing not to.
Oh.
And initially, that wasn't the choices I posed because like they were so close to each other in proximity
Yes.
that I thought, and like that I framed it as something else. I framed Lola's choice as something after presidency pa. But this one ended up much better because like it, while they were close in proximity to each other, there's just so much to show after Lolo Ninoy passed, and in the middle of that, it worked out well. But yeah, basically we were working on putting it together for a while.
Okay.
I think the Cory part had finally taken shape by the end of 2024, right?
Okay.
And like I guess you weren't there, no, but our first test audience was like a group from Atom and PPVR, so People Power Volunteers for Reform. We gave them a preview of the exhibit on November 27, Lolo Ninoy's birthday.
Okay.
In that one, it ended with Cory. We weren't done with Pinoy yet. Pinoy, we finished like a week before we opened. Right.
Clutch.
Yeah, because like with Tito Noy, it was like that one, the area for his wing, which we kind of call it now, is like it didn't used to be exhibition space. It was like a museum. It was like office space.
Okay.
Right?
Oh,
And in a way, it kind of like my mom likes that part the most because the old exhibition space was naturally lit. It was designed to be naturally lit.
Yeah.
That's just so bad for our artifact. So we just close all the windows now.
Okay.
So it's a little dimmer in like the Ninoy and Cory parts. When you get to Pinoy, where it was just meant to be lit artificially, it's a lot brighter together. So yun, parang there's, and then yun. So what we did was just we had to set up like stands with tarps and then like basically talking about like what he had done instead of like hanging things from area to area. So it's really quick once like we had settled on, okay, here's all the stuff that will go there. Right?
Yes.
It's just print the tarp, have the stand fabricated, and bam.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was like the last leg. And like there's still some things that we're finishing. Like the epilogue portion of the museum is something that I finally need to find time to like calm down and start working on. So because like I want the very last part to be like I don't know if you remember, but like we have just a display there of the safari jacket Lolo Ninoy was wearing when he was sentenced to death. So like a black safari jacket. Lola Cory's inaugural dress and Lolo Ninoy's inaugural barong. And it's just like it's not their faces anymore, but it's just, you know, they're gone. But like it's up to us to like continue. Right.
Ooh,
and so like the other element there is I just want to play on loop like a bunch of people talking about how Lola and Tito Noy sort of inspired them. Right? Na my excuse for not rolling it out right away is that we asked a bunch of people running in the election to do that, so I didn't want it to look like we're campaigning. Although I guess in the end, like I did come out campaigning very hard for certain candidates. But yeah, like what now? I have to sort of recompile all of those things so we can have something to present. But that's the immediate thing for the museum. And then again, it's like a rotating exhibit. Another thing that's exciting is like we're in touch with like one of the people who took the photos during the EDSA revolution, and they're donating like a whole bunch of their photo books to us. And excitingly, they still have access to like the negatives from those original photos, because like a big problem we've had with like the EDSA commemorations is we wanted to make big blow ups of like a lot of the iconic photos from EDSA, but since we don't have like the negatives, we're just working with really kind of small scan copies that look really blurry when blown up. But if we have access to that, it's like there's a lot of stuff we can do both for the 40th and also for the museum, where one of the first things I want to beef up in terms of like editing the exhibit is like I want to put a lot more about EDSA in there. So yeah, it's like it was the first renovation in 20 years. I don't like the next one isn't going to be in another 20 years. Right? We're going to be I plan to be updating it like pretty much regularly.
Oh, nice. Nice one. Congratulations on that project.
Yeah, really, really
Yeah.
happy with how it turned out. Really happy with how it turned out.
I'm actually going on May 24th, so that's next Saturday.
And this was in a vault, right? For
It's in a vault, yeah.
Right,
I'm gonna be going
yeah,
with
so I think. Oh no, I'm not gonna be there. I'm not gonna be there. Pala. Right.
Oh man.
So the other thing, so the other thing I'm doing pala is you know Atinto, the group that's going to that does like civilian missions to the West Philippine Sea.
Yes.
It's like they're doing like so this one's less risky. They're just doing like a concert in the contested waters.
Oh really?
So yeah.
Wait, how? Like
So like there's a boat.
on a
A
boat?
bunch of artists will do the concert on the boat,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And then they're gonna live stream it, right?
Oh.
Or I don't know if it's live stream or recorded. I don't know if like
What,
I don't know if there's
what boat will they do it on? Like,
I forget. I haven't seen the ship itself, right? But I think it's one of the things that they had done before. So it's not gonna be like a super in grande like stage or whatever. But like
yes.
a bunch of artists are gonna perform on a boat.
Is there gonna be an audience in there?
Yeah. Some there's gonna be like a civilian audience there, which is like me. So I'm gonna be just watch on the boat watch a concert for like a couple of days, which is great because like you know the one of the big proponents of this is Akbayan party list,
yes,
the Akbayan party list, right? And then I'm there na ML Tito Bam, and I'm like, I think at the back of our heads we're all worried like, are we gonna be sad in this? We're really sad in this trip, but like apparently no, we're not. We're gonna be really happy. So
definitely not.
so that's happening. I think if I remember right, it is the 24th to the 20th, or yeah, I think we lalayag from El Nido on the 25th, so I have to fly into El Nido on the day before. So yeah, I won't be. I'll be out by then. And then we'll be back. I think on the 29th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun and interesting project. Is that the first time they're doing?
So this is their third, right? So the first one was like
okay.
the first was a civilian resupply mission because like it's a contested area, right? So
Yes.
they need to we need to sort of resupply all of our soldiers and all of the communities that stay in the islands that are contested and it can be difficult because like China's also contesting that area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first time like they set sail, China blocked the main ship that went. So and like we're not crazy, right? So if we're told to stop, we stop. But they're able to sneak in like a smaller vessel to like deliver like the goods for our people there. The second time I think was a little less contentious. I wasn't there for either, so I don't have a perfect memory. But like they sent out this was like a Christmas gathering naman this is like a Christmas thing for a lot of the small fishermen who fish in the area. So they gave like just like groceries, parang pamasko for the people to share.
Nice.
And then this third one is like the idea is a concert. So this one is just like wherever we'll go as far as we can, where we stop, weigh anchor, and then concert, and then head back. Right.
That's so fun.
Yeah, exciting.
Nice. Right. Where will it be live streamed on?
I'll send a link like when it's available because like everyone's just like getting out of election mode, so we're kind of we have this other project.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay, so I guess a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
You're the grandson of Ninoy and Cory Aquino, very esteemed historical figures. Of course, Pinoy is your tito. Our tito, but you're direct, and then syempre, you're working. I mean, you just made quite about your museum,
right.
And all the other work you're doing for NCAF. I want to ask you what motivates you to do all of this to defend the legacy. Like what about their impact on your life motivates you?
Honestly, the real impetus was 2022, right?
Okay.
And again, so the surveys were wrong now, but before, as I kind of believe what surveys say, right? And fairly early on, they were predicting a pretty large margin between BPM and Lenny. And so for me, I had to, if I believe surveys, which basically I had until that point, I had to grapple with, okay, what's it going to be like with a Marcos president? And what made sense to me was this only makes sense if I'm like helping out the opposition one way or another, right? And I had realized that, like, because at the time, like, the name was really brought low, right? I mean, I'm sure you experienced that too. So, like, I don't know, it is it helpful if an Aquino is here, Aquino is there? I don't know, right? But the thing that for me was most concrete was I can work on the family name, right? Because, I mean, who else is gonna do it, right? Other than our family. So someone from our family has to do
True.
it.
Yeah. I mean,
And
definitely.
it's kumbaga, it's the way I can contribute where unambiguously being an Aquino like is not a drawback, right?
Mhm.
And in fact, it's like it helps, right? So yon after the campaign, I told my family that I want to be more active with NCAF, and the direction I want to take it is to be a lot more explicit about telling the stories of the three. Because previously, the way NCAF sort of operated was, and this is from the time Lola Cory was in charge, was, we do good works, and by our good works, the legacy of Lolo Ninoy, since it was just Benigno S. Aquino Foundation at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
the legacy of Lolo Ninoy would be remembered, right? Which is still something we do, right? We still have like a scholarship program. We still do like
Yes.
parang we still do like youth empowerment stuff. But I think the part of the work that I'm most passionate about is just telling the story, right? And so the
Mhm.
museum is a big part of that.
Yeah.
And like all like for me, that's our core document. Like the museum, I think it really came out well for me because, like, other than, again, Tito Dan just framed the whole narrative so well,
Mhm.
and also in terms of the content, it tells, like, for me, how we understand the story to have gone. So all of there's so much more that can be done that will spring from the museum, right? Not, I mean, not necessarily involving the museum, but I think the museum is like our true north. Like, this is the story, this is how we want it told, this is what we want people to take away. Whatever we do from this point will spring from that. So yeah, so that's how I ended up getting involved. Is just how do I make sense of like the current situation.
And now that we have an Aquino, another Aquino at top two in 2025, I think hopefully that makes your job easier with cleaning the
Yeah,
name.
it does, but it's also like again, we were talking about this. Like, see, Tito Bam really made himself his own person, right? Free college education, being Lenny's campaign manager, and
Oh
like
yes,
really like winning
definitely.
big in 2022. So I
Yes.
think like his we were talking about this, like the project for Tito Bam and for the
Different
broader Pink
project.
movement, it's related, but it's a separate project from like
Yes, on a man.
because Tito Bam ultimately is a forward-looking project, right? What
Yeah.
is like what can I offer to the country, not just now, but in 2028, 2030, 2031, 20 whatever, right? Parang it's a forward-looking project,
Yes.
and it's not just him. It's like it's Kiko, it's Lenny, it's Risa, all these
Yeah.
people, right? The I am happy to contribute to that project in as much as I can. And helping Tito Bam, helping ML was like a big part of that. But my main task is still the backward looking project, the historical side, right? And I mean, while I guess what I'll say is like I'm grateful all of the pull down that was done on our family didn't get in the way of Tito Bam doing as well as he did.
Yeah.
And I know, to the extent that I contributed to that, and I don't know what that extent is, probably not huge, but like to the extent that I contributed to that, great, right? But in the end, it is still like two separate projects, right?
Oh,
I
yes.
think I think
No, I get that.
whether Tito Bam is there or not, right? He's not gonna be. He should not be there making this about this is my legacy, this is who Ninoy was, this is who Cory was, this is who Pinoy was, right? He should
Yeah.
be talking about here's what I'm going to do for you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. On
And so that job is still something that kumbaga, the work doesn't change in my point of view because like this one thing that we really wanted to happen happened. This other thing that I really want to happen, which is that people just give Lolo Ninoy, Lola Cory, and Tito Nay a fair shake, right? That they don't like automatically regurgitate the talking points of whatever misinformation is out there when they think about Ninoy and Cory Pinoy. That's what I want, and that's like, it is a distinct thing from what the
Yeah.
Amazon.
They're the distinct projects.
Yeah,
But I think eventually they'll kind of help each other.
that's right. That's
in,
right.
I
Yeah.
mean, in terms of their actual impacts.
Yeah.
Like they'll
Yeah.
they'll help each other, like like the backward looking stuff
Yeah.
that you're doing will can be amplified by Tito Bam.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
Just
again,
making
like I think my
their
thing is like for Tito Bam, it shouldn't be something he's concerning himself with, right?
kasi the
There's
very
so-
nature of
yeah.
his work.
Yeah,
is-
there's so much else that he has to be working on.
Yeah,
right?
parang it's good that
Yeah.
we have like multiple members of the family.
Right,
dealing
right,
with it.
right.
But syempre, we're all,
Yeah.
we're all looking towards a common
Yeah.
vision, which
So-
is, promoting values that really matter.
Exactly.
Promoting good values for that
Right.
matter. So that's all my questions for you.
Yeah,
and
man,
I'm
thank
really, really grateful that you spoke. I think we're at almost 2 hours already.
Again, like I like the yap, right?
I
So
love
we're
to
good.
hear that.
Thank
I
you,
love
man.
to hear that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kiko.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey there, thanks for listening to the Hey Eiyo podcast. If you enjoyed, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your other favorite podcast apps. And follow me, Eiyo Aquino, EIYOAQUINO on TikTok.